Well, good evening. You're tuned in to the Monday, July 15th, 2013 edition of Wide Awake News. Hope everybody had a good weekend. It was very pleasant weather here on the East Coast, just south of Washington, D.C. We had a, very pleasant weekend. I didn't get to enjoy much of it because my wife had mowing the lawn on the honey-do list, but hey, you do what you have to do. Getting on to tonight's newsworthy topics, I guess, it wouldn't really be a news commentary if I didn't comment on the fact that yesterday, George Zimmerman, who is described as a white volunteer neighborhood watch type person, was found innocent of the wrongful death of a young man named Trayvon Martin, who has been described in the press as being an innocent young man whose only guilt was walking through the neighborhood while black. Obviously, there's many sides to this, and I'm not gonna, try to decide, who's what and who's where and what's what. Bottom line is, based on the evidence presented, Mr. Zimmerman could not possibly have been found guilty of the willful murder of Mr. Martin. The death of a young person is always unfortunate, regardless of the circumstances. Frankly, if that kid Martin had been guilty of all sorts of heinous crimes, it would still have been most unfortunate for him to find his demise in that way. But, on the other hand, Mr. Zimmerman, placed in a very uncomfortable situation where he may indeed have been in fear for his life, had a natural right, under laws much higher than any the state can write, to defend his life in any way he saw fit. And without any convincing evidence to the contrary, keep in mind, the nature of the conviction has to be beyond a shadow of a doubt. In other words, the evidence must be 100% convincing that Mr. Zimmerman sought to kill Mr. Martin, purposely pointed his weapon at the young man, and pulled the trigger with the intent to kill. That is the definition of murder. Based on the trial, I don't think any rational jury could have found the man guilty. The evidence was not convincing. Next. I'm probably a little bit older than a lot of the folks in this audience. And, I remember, the cop on the beat, we actually had a cop who walked on foot through our neighborhood. Later on, as I got older, I noticed that, he was not as readily accessible. He drove through the neighborhood in a car. But, he was our cop. We saw the same cop all the time, and, we kind of knew him. We kind of trusted him, and if you're in a jam, you felt like you could go to the cop and discuss your problem with him. If you had a dispute with a neighbor, he was basically a peace officer. He was there to maintain the peace. So if you had a dispute with a neighbor, if the kids were cutting through your yard and that type of thing, you could always count on him to try to mediate such instances and maintain the peace. About the worst we ever had to worry about back in those days was, some boss hog running a small town somewhere, usually in Georgia or something like that, and we heard about these things, it never happened in our neighborhood, but, he had some boss hog who ran a little town like it was his little fiefdom, and, he had the local sheriff in his hip pocket and, pretty much got him to do whatever he wanted him done. And, if you pissed off boss hog, he had law on his side, and he'd sick guys in uniform out to get you. And of course, it became almost a comedic routine to many. But I suspect most people, even people in the South, think of their local sheriff, local peace officers, their local police, more along the lines of, Andy Mayberry type thing, You kind of expected your law enforcement officers to really be peace officers. They were there to maintain the peace. They weren't there to, micromanage or mess with people. And in the case of Andy Griffith's character in the sitcom from the mid to late 1960s, Andy didn't even carry a gun, and he only let Barney keep one bullet in his pocket. You kind of look back and wish for those simpler times. Today, when we think of police, law enforcement, more and more the picture that comes to mind is a paramilitary organization, the type of thing that in times past we would have equated with some South American banana dictatorship. That kind of thing had never happened here. You never have military personnel out there, enforcing the law and harassing the peasantry. That wouldn't happen in the United States of America. But more and more today, the image that comes to mind for many Americans when they think of law enforcement is some guy in a military outfit carrying a submachine gun in his hands with a pistol strapped to his shoulders with a bad case of attitude like maybe he's popped too darn many steroids. And they have this attitude where it's us against them. And guess what? You be them, okay? If you ain't part of their brotherhood, you're part of them. And they got this attitude like you are the bad guy. You just ain't been caught yet. You're doing something, you just ain't been caught yet. And it's up to them to make sure that you get caught. That seems to be the attitude going down. Now, some people have proposed that a lot of it is image. The police right now are getting a really bad image. You don't have to spend much time on YouTube to find all sorts of ghastly videos about, police overstepping their bounds when it comes to interactions with the general public. So how do we clean up that image and make the police once again somebody that the citizenry can trust, identify with, feel better about? Well, some have suggested that it might have something to do with the way they're dressing nowadays. I mean, my goodness, they're looking more and more like a military outfit. These no longer look like keepers of the peace. It looks like a military unit out there. They're frightening in their moded dress. So maybe a slightly different uniform would make them more appealing to the general public. I have to talk to some boys on Madison Avenue about that and see what we can do. In any case, we'll be back with more Wide Awake News right after these commercial announcements. I'm so accustomed to doing these things for a video audience, doing these things for for YouTube and for the live audience that watches on Justin TV. You know, I forget that there's a huge radio audience out there listening on Justin TV who missed my opening gag. You know, I was talking about the craziness of the militarization of law enforcement here in the United States. You know, we had a visual image. Now I have some sight gags associated with it. I had a cutesy picture of Boss Hogg and his sheriff, and I had a cutesy picture of Andy and Barney, and then of course I had a picture of this SWAT team being deployed in an armored personnel carrier. And I mentioned that Madison Avenue might be able to clean up their failing image, and I suggested a possible modification of their attire that might get folks to be more respectful of police and feel more warm and fuzzy about them. And of course, for my visual sight gag, I used an image of one of Darth Vader's stormtroopers. But I try to present this with a little tongue-in-cheek humor because frankly, sometimes a little bit of sugar helps the medicine go down. The fact is, here in the United States, the use of these special weapons and tactics law enforcement groups, what people commonly refer to as SWAT, has just gotten crazy. I mean, if you think about it, back in the 1970s, it was, maybe 200-300 times a year, SWAT would have to be deployed for some kind of really unusual situation where, boy, you needed to bring a tremendous amount of force to bear. Okay, like maybe you got a bunch of bank robbers, cornered in a bank. You bring in a SWAT team to try and rescue the hostages and take out the bad guys. You can understand why a municipality, whether it be it a city or a county or whatever, might wish to have that option available to them. There may indeed be situations when that much force is really required. But to take that type of action against just average folks, victimless crime type scenarios, or God help us, like the 5-year-old girl down south who apparently had a SWAT raid because she had an overdue library book. Needless to say, the tally on SWAT raids in the United States has gone from a couple 200 or 300 back in the 70s to 50,000 deployments a year. You best pay that parking ticket, okay? Because you're liable to have Darth Vader and his buddies visiting you if you don't. 50,000 SWAT. All right. Moving right along. We piss and moan a lot about our Congress. You wonder how those guys get elected, and how so many incumbents get reelected. Usually, 90% or more of the incumbents always seem to get back. They always seem to get their seat back come election day. And, you scratch your head and you wonder, who is voting for these people? And then when you read a poll, like a June Gallup poll, showed that Congress, our U.S. Congress, has a 10% approval rating. 10% of the population of the United States thinks the Congress is okay. How about that, But a March poll showed that 12% had a favorable opinion of North Korea. So, yeah, the Congress of the United States gets a poorer score with American average Joe citizen who's polled, gets a lower score than North Korea. As a matter of fact, just to give you an idea, based on polls going back quite some time, the U.S. Congress is less popular among the American people than cockroaches, lice, root canals, colonoscopies, traffic jams, used car salesmen, Genghis Khan, communism, BP during the Gulf oil spill, Nixon during Watergate, or King George during the American Revolution. That is how unpopular the U.S. Congress is with average Americans who took the poll. Once again, how the hell are these incumbents getting reelected? Guess it might be easy if you know the guy who programs the voting computers. You know, looking at the schedule here, yep. I thought that break music was going to start playing about now. I tried to time it just right for the break. When we come back, we'll have more exciting adventures in news commentary on Monday's Wide Awake News. You hang in there. We'll be right back. Alrighty, and we're back from our break, and do have a caller on the line. Richard from Washington saw fit to call up. Perhaps he's going to take exception with some of my commentary. It's always a pleasure to hear an additional point of view. For anybody else out there who might be so inclined, I've got the number posted up over my face there. You can hardly read it. It's 877-342-6673. And if you have an opinion on any of the topics of discussion tonight, give us a call. We'll be happy to entertain your opinion. And now on to Richard from Washington. All right, man. What did I say that pissed you off? You want to take it?
No, you stimulated my interest, but first of all, I'll say you can also call it 717-337-1689, and that makes it your dime versus Jeff's dime. So, we always want to save Jeff a little money and do it on our dime. But basically what I wanted to say is everybody should go to the 40 outrageous facts most people don't know. You'll get a true different perspective of the longevity of the how long the disinformation and PSYOPs implementation has taken us. And you were talking about the police. One of those 40 facts is, it is not the duty of the police to protect you. It is their job to protect the corporation and arrest the code breakers. And it gives a whole bunch of cites for that. But basically, that's the whole point, is the New World Order has been in existence from the year zero. And everybody's talking about, whoops, the New World Order may come tomorrow. Well, it's been here since the zero, which means it's been in force for 2013 years. And martial law, since the Lieber Code in 1863, that's the Civil War, martial law has been implemented ever since then. So, all these people talking about, whoa, we better watch out for martial law to be implemented, are about 100 years too late, 150 really years too late. It's been in effect for 150 years. So, you got to bring yourself up to date occasionally just to check out history.
Well, to a certain degree, and I agree with you up to a point. I mean, these periods of oppression have come and gone and come and gone repeatedly throughout recorded history, and it's not just Western civilization where it's been like that. You can also see similar trends in Eastern civilization. I'm thinking about in India and in China. Both of those modern nations have had histories that have been rife with periods of extreme oppression, followed by periods of extreme openness and freedom for the average person. And it seems to be tough for humanity to find a balance between the needs of the individual and the needs of the state. Both entities will always exist. We're always going to have a state that is always going to attempt to overreach those bounds that the average human would find reasonable and acceptable. It's just human nature. The state is made up of human beings, and human beings wish to control. They wish to control their environment, and that's, I think, what we see from governments or organized state bureaucracies or whatever. They tend to try to increase their power and control over others. That's just human nature. At some point, average Joe citizen says, hey, we've had enough of this, off with their heads, and you have something like a, first, second, third French Revolution, and, you're back to a fairly libertarian type environment for a little while. That seems to be up and down throughout history. Would you agree?
Well, rather than come and go, I would say ebb and flow. It's always we are always the slaves. We are always being protected by government. And one of the last of the 40, number 40 of those 40 outrageous facts most people don't know is a definition of government. That's gubernato from Greek, meaning guiding, mente mind, guiding the mind. Government is supposed to psyop us. That's what their job is, to keep us in line and keep us in the slave mentality. None are most hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. That's Van Gogh. So if you look at the philosophers, they know we are basically slaves. We want to be the herd animals. We want to be in the middle of the herd and protected and just follow the alpha male. That's what they get us to go under. And by doing so, basically, we just follow the control mode and stop thinking and follow the psyops and just go along with the flow. But in reality, that's the exact opposite of freedom and self-reliance, and we always have to be in guard about the fact that government is there to make us unthinking, unreactive people.
Well, Richard,
I
got a whole pile of news items here I got to get through, so I give you about another 30 seconds to summarize your thoughts, and I'm going to have to press on with additional items.
Well, my one clear thought is it's always been the individual against the system, the society. So it's always going to be like that. So unless you're a individual, freedom-loving, self-reliant individual, you're probably a brainwashed member of the herd, and you deserve what you get. Hey, great show. Keep up the good work.
Thank you kindly, Richard. You have a good evening. Well, let's see. Pressing on to other issues, Russian military stages biggest war games since Soviet times. Will there be a World War III? Albert Pike's letter. How do you comment on something like this? Well, when I see news that confuses me and I'm not really sure, I tend to go to, some of the true thinkers out there to see how they handle things. So I found an interesting little poem. I'm going to read you just a little bit, because it's a fairly long poem, and I don't think I'll be able to get through it all. But let's see how much of this I can get through in the time allowed. Some time ago, a crazy dream came to me. I dreamt I was walking into World War III. I went to the doctor the very next day to see what kind of words he could say. He said it was a bad dream. I wouldn't worry about it none, though they were my own dreams, and they're only in my head. I said, "Hold it, Doc. A world war passed through my brain." He said, "Nurse, get your pad. This boy's insane." He grabbed my arm. I said, "Ouch." as I landed on the psychiatric couch. He said, "Tell me all about it." Well, the whole thing started at 3 o'clock fast. It was over by 1:15. I was down in the sewer with some little lover when I peeked out from a manhole cover, wondering who turned the lights on. Well, I got up and walked around and up and down the lonesome town. I stood a-wondering which way to go. I lit a cigarette on a parking meter and walked on down the road. It was a normal day. Well, I rung the fallout shelter bell, and I leaned my head and I gave a yell. "Give me a string bean, I'm a hungry man." A shotgun fired, and away I ran. I don't blame them too much. I know I look funny. Down at the corner by a hot dog stand, I see a man. I say, "Howdy, friend. I guess there's just us two." He screamed a bit, and away he flew. Thought I was a communist. I'm going to leave it right there. That's from an untitled submission from Bob Dylan. Yeah. World War III. You know, wise men have said that chances are World War III will start with the weapons that ended World War II. And that if there's anyone left to fight World War IV, it'll probably be fought with sticks and stones. Now, anybody who thinks World War III is a great idea obviously is not old enough to have witnessed such a war. And we'll be back with more right after these messages. Helps if I unmute my microphone. Got into this discussion of the possibility of World War III because, this issue with Syria took on a new dimension recently when it appears that fighter bombers operated by Israel launched from Turkey with apparent approval of NATO were used last week to bomb a weapons cache of advanced Russian anti-aircraft missiles within the borders of Syria. Now, by any stretch of the imagination, I mean, I don't care how you try to rationalize it, that is a blatant act of aggression. It's an act of war. We're no longer talking about, rebels opposing the government of Syria. We are now talking about one sovereign state, Israel, launching an unprovoked attack against another sovereign state, Syria, with help from nations that are allied with the United States. Now, Russia obviously has some interest in Syria. They have some interest in Iran, while we certainly have interests in that region. This bellicose maneuvering that's going on right now has to be considered a threat, certainly by Syria, certainly by Iran, and most definitely by Russia. Now, when you're going to go kick somebody's ass, it's nice to know that, you can kick their ass up one side, down the other, and maybe come out of it without a scratch, okay? Now, we've recently done a number on Afghanistan, Okay. Iraq, ooh, well, that hurt a little bit, but, pulled it off. Libya, well, you know. But now, you start messing around with Russia, those boys really got weapons of mass destruction, okay? I mean, it's not just, George Bush's, well, they got weapons of mass destruction. We know because we got the receipts. We sold them to them. No. The Russians got serious weapons of mass destruction. Now, there's always been this, mutual assured destruction thing going on between the U.S. and Russia. We kind of go, eyeball to eyeball, but mostly we try to get along because we know that neither one of those nations could be assured of a clean, easy win. Okay? If Russia and the United States ever went at it serious, there'd be no winners. That is not a war that either side can win. The only way to win such an engagement is not to engage. With this headlong push towards war that's being maneuvered on us, it's hard to come to you with any solutions as to how we avoid it because, this game's been played on you before. It's been played on you for World War I. It's been played on you for World War II. And they're getting ready to play it on you for World War III. There will be some event in the very near future that will be posed to you as justification. Got to go kick those guys' ass because they did something bad. They're evil SOBs. They treat their women badly. They eat babies. There will be some compelling argument put on the table for you why you should get behind your boys in uniform as they march off to fight yet another global conflict. Well, these days, I'm not even sure the boys will march off. It might all happen from a Connex box out in Nevada somewhere where a couple of pimple-faced kids push the right buttons. Who knows? If you really think that the Russians aren't taking this serious, Russian military stages biggest war games since Soviet times. This is headline an article from Russia Today. 160,000 servicemen, 1,000 tanks, 130 airplanes, 70 ships taking part in Russia's biggest military drill since Soviet. The war games will continue in the country's far east until July 20th. Now, basically, the Russians are flexing their muscles a little bit. Okay, guys, you really want to play this game? You really want to go there? Hopefully, cooler heads will prevail. I wish I had a solution to that. I really wish I do. Really wish I did. But, looking at it, it may just be that, Albert Pike's letter, where he laid out the description of 3 world wars, and he called them pretty much right on time. He called World War I, he called World War II, and, it looks like, we're all set up and ready to go for World War III. It seems like it is almost preordained. How can people of good conscience pull their governments back from the brink? What could we do? Another article in the news, it's a little bit lighter topic than global thermonuclear war. But, still, it's kind of a serious issue and something that maybe average folks could wrap their heads around and maybe do something about. Keep in mind, you have to choose your battles carefully. There's battles you can win, there's battles that you can't. Some of these items, about the best you can really do is stand on your soapbox, wave your fist, and bark at the moon. It's kind of what I do, a lot of it. But this is something that you might actually be able to change. This is a much smaller issue, but it hits at home. It hits everybody. National Geographic photographer arrested after aerial photos. Now, okay, he was photographing, some big shot's private lair or something like that, right? No. He was photographing a feed lot. A feed lot where cows go to get fattened up before they become your burger. Yes, agribiz has gotten laws passed to keep people from documenting the abuses and unclean methods used for producing your food. Yeah, doesn't that give you warm and fuzzy? Always in the name of safety and protecting trade secrets. It's one thing to keep people from committing theft, destruction of property, breaking and entering, intellectual property theft, and privacy violations, which, basic laws support, but it's wholly another to prosecute well-intentioned tourists or try peaceful protesters as terrorists. But yes, in our corporate legal system, if you try to get into that meatpacking plant and take photographic evidence of, their abuses and excesses of the animals, you're a terrorist. You could be in a 6x9 in Guantanamo. Isn't that interesting? Spokesman Todd Dahmer said the group continues to stress to its members to be watchful, and this incident is a good reminder of the importance of being alert in an effort to provide a safe product for the food supply. Do you believe that? Do you believe that the reason these laws are being passed is to make sure that you get safe food? Are you buying it? Are you buying it, guys? Think about it. Yet we got a photographer working for a very reputable organization, National Geographic of all people, who faces criminal charges because he overflew a feedlot and took photographs. You going to let a law like that stand? Couple of quickies. I got to get these out there. I'm going to... In the People's Republic of San Francisco, dog walkers must now be licensed. I try to leave you with a joke for the last bit. That one's not funny. But yeah, if you walk dogs for a living, you got to now be licensed and have $1 million personal liability insurance plan. Hope you enjoyed tonight's Wide Awake News. Stay tuned for Jeff Rentz. He's coming up next. And you betcha, we'll see you next week.